What's up, guys? This is Semi out here from Phantom Knight Trading Company, and today we're going to be starting a brand new series about Generation 1 of the Pokemon trading card game. So this is where the game began. I remember as a kid I used to collect these cards, and everyone in the neighborhood were crazy about them. You know, we all brought them to school. It caused a lot of fights on the playground, but it was fun times and a lot of great nostalgia. So I'm starting this series for two particular reasons. One, just to relive the original meta game of Generation One, because you know when I was collecting these cards as a kid, I was too young to really know how to play correctly, what the meta even looked like, anything like that. So now, as I'm older and I'm looking at these cards and learning about all the brand new, or about rather the old meta game of Generation One, it's really fun for me. And you know, Legacy was a brand new format as well, so learning that was really cool and interesting to figure out new deck ideas and see what would work well and what wouldn't. And also because you know it being a brand new format, there really wasn't much information out there for Legacy. And as I've tried to look through some information for Generation One, there's very little quality information out there, even for this format. Like if you try to look up videos for Generation One on YouTube, there's hardly anything. Um, and so hopefully we can change that by introducing this Generation One video series. And so today we're going to be talking about the meta game, a lot of the most competitive trainers that you're going to be using, and some of the well-known Pokemon that are going to be involved. There's so many Pokemon that we can cover. There's way too many in one video, so we're just going to be hitting the highlights of Pokemon. We're going to be covering the most played trainers because there's also a ton of trainers that are playable in this meta game. And yeah, so in general, we're gonna be using TCG1 rather than PTCGO to showcase the decks and matches, because PTCGO doesn't implement the old generations. Their first set that's available is going to be Hard Gold Soul Silver, but here on TCG1 they have implemented and automated all the sets from the very beginning up until let me see here, up until you can see here that they've implemented in career mode up until Ruby and Sapphire and Skyridge, and then it kind of starts off into Black and White. So the career mode is still being developed. Basically, for TCG1, the career mode is the same thing as in PTCGO, where you trade and build up your collection online. There's options to play for, like you can play with any card available and play in any format using the quick play options. Um, but in quick play, there's not as many players in the queues, but and then the lines for when you want to start matches. So rather than that, we're going to be going down the career mode route. And the career mode is, you know, so we're building our collection online, and it's gonna be pretty expensive to build a full collection. It's gonna take some time and take some grinding, but it's totally worth it because you're going to be able to play these old formats, and the nostalgia factor is just so high for something like this. And so that really is part of the big reason why I'm doing this for you guys. So let's talk about the general meta of Generation 1. The Generation 1 meta was a super fast meta. A lot of the trainers are what you would consider to be broken nowadays, and a lot of the Pokemon as well. And um, it basically revolved around big basic Pokemon hitting you fast and hard, and also disrupting every aspect of the game on your side. There's so many trainers that can just completely wall you out of a match, no matter how good your deck could be. That it's a huge comeback game. It's a huge comeback meta. Even a theme deck built with the right trainers can just block you out of a match. So it's really exciting that way. You know, you can't just go in there with one deck and be like, okay, well I'm gonna win everything now, because there's just too much out there to really to mess around with any deck that you can create. So the primary strategy with Generation 1 involved basically attacking for one energy. And the reason why is because there's some really overpowered trainers that just remove your energy at any given point in the match at multiple times per turn. And so, multiple energy attacks are going to be hard to utilize consistently. So the big format's going to basically revolve around one energy attacks. There are some attacks that obviously are going to be involved with more energy, and those are usually going to be like cleaning attacks. They finish up something, like they finish up a Pokemon, things like that. But yeah, one energy attacks is basically the way that Generation One kind of works, and so that's going to be something to look out for when you're looking at some of these Pokemon. The HPs and the attacks back then, they didn't do too much damage. There was not a single card back then whose HP was higher than 120. And the attacks, one like doing 20 for one energy was amazing back then. Like if you could do 20 for one, uh, you could build really powerful decks. And the common HP goal, like 170 is an HP goal nowadays for EXs. Back then, the most common HP goal was going to be 70. Um, a lot of the strongest Pokemon in this format have 70 HP, and so the amount of damage that you're dealing out usually things like 20 damage is awesome for one energy. If you could do 30 damage for one energy, that is absolutely amazing. Like very few attacks can hit that hard for a single energy. Some of the multiple energy attacks can get up to can get up to 40, sometimes 50 with 3 or 4 energies, and so you can kind of see, um, how the meta works, because if your HPs are low at 70, your attacks are only 20 and 30. This meta is going to be usually a 2-hit KO meta. Um, but there are some options to do 1-hit KOs, and you're going to be seeing those options in the decks that we showcase. And I'm going to even show 1 or 2 Pokemon today that allow you to do things like that. But yeah, in general, that's kind of how the meta works. The other thing to mention again is like the online information for Generation 1 is very incomplete, because here on TCG1, Generation 1 is defined as everything from base set to jungle, fossil, base set 2, which is mostly reprints of base set, Team Rocket, the Wizards of the Black Star, the Wizards Black Star promos, Gym Heroes, Gym Challenge, Vending Machine, which is not implemented in TCG1's career mode, and Southern Islands, which is not implemented in career mode as of yet. So that's basically the Generation 1 on TCG1. And so a lot of the information online usually only encompasses the first couple of sets, because those are the big nostalgia sets that everyone remembers. And so a lot of their lists encompass just these couple of sets. They're not encompassing of the rest of the meta that has developed. And so hopefully today we're going to be showing you all the items that encompass the entire generation, so that you can know what kind of decks to build for this thing. Um, okay, so let's talk about a little bit about TCG1 as well. Uh, the way that it works is basically here on this side here is your career mode. You can see that right now I'm currently level 25 and I have 107 bits. And bits is the currency in this game. With bits, you can go to the market and you can buy cards. You can see some of the prices for some of the cards here. In the store, you can buy packs. You can see some of the prices involved here. Um, and so and then when you buy a pack with your bits, then you open up the pack and you start building your online collection. In a match, a really long, grueling match can reward you up to maybe 60, 70 bits, but in general, most matches will give you about 35 to 40 bits per match. So you can kind of see how long it would take you to grind through to build your collection. Now, some of the card prices are really up and down. You can see here this one card is this Crystal Charizard from a later. This isn't gonna work in Gen 1. It's a later card. But you can see the price is 1,500 bits. Some of the bigger prices here. You can also see that in the Hall. The Hall is basically a restructuring of the market. You can click a card. You can search for any card. Like let's look at computer search. So look at computer search. You can pull up the card image by right clicking down here. You can read it all, and it also gives you a list of all the prices in the market for that one card. So you can see here that computer search, which is a big staple in almost every deck in Gen 1, is going to be about 400 packs, or not packs, but bits. There's a huge amount of variance, as you can see. There's 600 here, 400 here, and it just continues to go down and on. You can filter these by prices. You can see that one person has asked for 1,400. Some of these prices are outdated because the way it works on TCG1 is you can set a card for sale, and it stays up. There's no timer on it, and it'll just stay there. And so sometimes you can have a card that you tried to sell a week ago still be in the market for sale. Okay, sorry about that. I noticed that the bottom part of the screen was being cut off, and so I wanted to fix that real quick. But yeah, so this is the market, or also called the hall. You can buy anything from here that you would like, as long as you have the amount of bits necessary. You can even compare and see, what prices you like, which one would work well for you. You can search for anything in here. Some cards don't have a price, like let me look at Mewtwo. So there's promo Mewtwo's. Unfortunately, you can't get promos that are tradable as of yet, but you can see here that potentially in the future there could be a way to get them via buying them. But currently, the only way to really get promos is through your achievements. They have a bunch of achievements listed here that allow you to basically earn promos as you go along. Sometimes the achievements give you some other stuff, but you can see if you click on one, it tells you what the condition is to achieve the achievement, and then the reward you get, which is going to be a trade locked promo. Um, when you first start career mode, you're able to pick a deck, a theme deck. They come with trade lock cards, and so you'll be able to use them for deck building, which you won't be able to try to sell them on the market. The other thing to mention is that you need to get to level 10 to be able to sell things on the market. I think they use that as a way to prevent abuse of the system or something. But yeah, getting to level 10 is not too easy of a feat. You will be playing quite a bit of matches to get to that point. Um, and but once you do, you're able to sell cards. If you got a bunch of bits from getting into level 10 and you start buying packs and you want to just trade those packs, or not trade the packs, trade the cards for bits, then at level 10 you'll be able to sell them on the market. um, yeah, there's also, so the store is here, your inventory is here. This is all the cards that you own in your binder. Your deck list for just career mode is here. There's another whole separate deck list for quick play, which allows you access to every card in the game without needing to have to collect it via career mode. There's quests. You get new quests every day. Max quest count that you can have at any given point is 6. You get 2 new per day if you can finish all of them. And then achievements. Some of these achievements are collection achievements, like I was able to complete this collect all base set cards achievement, and I got an Arcanine for my troubles. They have one for every set as you continue to go down. Um, but yeah, so we'll talk about it later, but one of the cards that you're going to get from these achievements is going to be very important, so that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, let's go ahead. Okay, and one other thing to mention is you can play people via this method here. Like you can either play quick play, which you're going to use your quick play decks that you built with every card in the game, or you can play career mode, which includes just the cards that you have collected via packs and bits and all that. You can select your format, and then you just select your deck, and then you just click play, and you're added to a queue. I'm not going to click play yet because I don't want to get into a match, but you click play, you add it to a queue, and then you just wait until it finds an opponent for you, and then your match starts. So that's how TCG1 works. That's how you're going to want to play Gen 1. And so let's go ahead and get into some of the cards that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be going in through the items first. Well, one kind of general structure to proceed for Gen 1 is going to be the proportions of your decks. Currently, if you're an avid player of the standard and expanded meta games, then most decks are usually constructed with about like 10 to 12 Pokemon, about 12 energy, and then the rest is going to be trainers, so about 36 trainers. That's kind of the structure of most competitive decks. Obviously, there are exceptions, things like Night March, which only run 4 energy. And then there's other cards, other decks that run up to 11 or 12 energy. But in Gen 1, though, the proportions are going to be a little tweaked. Energy counts are usually higher in Gen 1. Most competitive decks are going to be near about 15 to 17 energy, sometimes more. In terms of Pokemon, it can vary, but sometimes people will have about 15 Pokemon in Gen 1 decks. Obviously, certain decks are going to have different proportions, but this is just a general layout. And then the rest are going to be trainers. So that's kind of how deck building works in Gen 1. And there's a huge problem with Gen 1 called the 60 card syndrome, where there are so many playable cards and so many critical cards, but there's no way you can fit everything into a 60 card deck. So you're gonna have to pick and choose how to build your deck pretty carefully, because and you're never gonna be able to build a deck that encompasses every possible scenario you're gonna face. So that's just a heads up for you guys. There's just too many playable cards, too many good cards to cram into a 60 card deck along with Pokemon and along with energy. So that's just all right. So let's get into some of the trainers. Very first trainer we're going to be talking about, and the first couple of cards we're going to be talking about is going to be your kind of draw engines. So we're going to be looking at Professor Oak. Best trainer in Gen 1. One other thing to mention is there is no supporters in Gen 1. There's only trainers, Pokemon, and energy, and stadiums. But stadium is also a trainer. So in Gen 1, you can theoretically play this card, Professor Oak, which discards your hand and then draws 7 cards, 4 times in a match if you just use the Oaks that you put into a deck. There's another item that allow you to play even more than 4. So as you can see, um, and what I meant to say was in one turn. So you can play as many trainers as you want in one turn. That includes Professor Oak. So you can theoretically draw through your entire deck in one turn by playing 4 Oaks, potentially 5 or 6 Oaks if you had Item Finder, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, so that's one huge difference from the standard and expanded metagames and the game that we know now to this game, which was Gen 1. You can play as many trainers as you want in a turn. So heads up on that. But Professor Oak, one of the best trainers ever printed. Discard your hand, then draw 7 cards. In Gen 1, there's not as many good shuffle options, so you're going to be mostly looking at discard options. And there's a lot of trainers in Gen 1 that discard cards from your hand to have the effect happen. So your hand's going to be pretty depleted most of the time after using those other trainers, and so Oak is going to be an incredible trainer to allow you to get a new hand, basically, and to get rid of the dead one you might have at that given moment. Most decks play 3 to 4 Oaks in a match. Item Finder allows you to get more. But yeah, this is a huge staple in Gen 1. You're definitely going to want these cards. Its price, as you can see here, I'm selling one for about 180, so not as much as things like Computer Search, but still fairly expensive since everyone relies on it for decks. So that's a heads up on how much it's going to cost. Next card we're going to talk about is Bill. So again, like I said, trainers, you can play as many as you want in one turn. So Bill basically just draws 2 cards. Incredible card. The Bill we know today is a supporter, but it's a terrible supporter. If you're only allowed to use 1 per turn and you draw 2 cards for that supporter option, it's really bad. But in Gen 1, it was being a trainer, you can play up to 4 Bills in one turn. So Bill is an amazing card in Gen 1. Most decks will run 3 to 4 Bill. Because you can sometimes draw with an Oak into like 3 Bills, and you can just play them all at once to get your hand to a huge amount to figure out how you're going to approach that turn. So really important staple. Just draw 2 cards. There's no drawback. Very, very potent and effective. Usually 3 to 4 in decks. It's actually really cheap because it is common, and so Gen 1 packs will really just give you plenty of bills so if you just open a couple of them, you're gonna get enough bills for a deck. Super cheap. Next card we're going to talk about, again, we're going to be focusing right now on draw cards, so we're going to be looking at Erica. Erica is a trainer that allows you to draw up to 3 cards, and then your opponent may draw up to 3 cards. So 1 card better than Bill, but your opponent also gets the benefit of Erica as well. Some decks will use Erica because they're gonna need to set up. And what happens usually is you're gonna play a couple of Ericas, try to get as much cards from your hand as you want to play, and then if you're set up with something that you feel comfortable with, you're going to hit them with the last, which we're going to talk about later. But last really cripples the opponent's hand, so they don't really get the full benefit of Erica that they otherwise would have. But that's one strategy, and that's why Erica is really cool. You can just draw up to 3 cards, and again, you can play these trainers as many times as you want in a turn. So you can play a Bill and then an Erica. You can play another Bill, another Erica. You can draw like 10, 12 cards and an Oak after that. Like, you can see how fast the meta game is if you are able to play these powerful cards in as many times as you want in one turn. Price wise, it's expensive. It is a rare from Gym Heroes. You can see which set they come from with this list here. About 350 is what they're going for. Next card is Erica's Gaze. Maybe I spelled this wrong. Let's just look at Gaze. Sabrina's Gaze, sorry. Okay, so this is going to be really the only option you have for shuffle draw slash shuffle support slash trainer. Oak discards your hand every time you play it, and so a lot of times it's going to be really bad in a long drawn out match. Some matches they go the distance and they go further, and so deck outs are a huge problem in Gen 1. So many trainers allow you to discard cards that you're going to deck out a lot, and a lot of matches are decided by deck out. Sabrina's Gaze helps you to mitigate that a little bit. It says each player shuffles his or her hand into their deck and then draws a new hand of the same amount of cards. So if you have a hand that's full of Pokemon that you can't get rid of, you're playing an evolution deck and you don't have the cards to evolve yet, or it's turn 1, then this card allows you to shuffle those cards back in and hopefully get a new hand that you can play with and then potentially Oak with as well. So Sabrina's Gaze is your really only shuffle option in Gen 1. It's not as played as heavily because the other items in Gen 1 discard so many cards that you're usually going to want to Oak instead of being forced to use Sabrina's Gaze. But sometimes it can be useful for sure. Price wise is super cheap, 20 bits, very easy to get. Alright, so those are really the biggest draw options in Gen 1. So now let's go into some of the items in Gen 1. And definitely the biggest item, the first item we're going to be talking about is going to be computer search. Again, I keep saying item and draw and supporter and all that stuff, but they're all trainers. So remember, you can play these as many times as you want per turn. But computer search, discard 2 cards from your hand in order to search your deck for any card, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck afterwards. Insane card. Your whole deck is available to you with this card, and you can play 4 of these in a deck. Huge card for consistency. If you can even computer search into an Oak and then get rid of your hand and computer search more for another whatever you need, and even potentially get another Oak. Like, so many uses. You can get anything you want out of your deck with computer search. Most decks will run 3 to 4 copies of this card, usually 4, because it's just so awesome and amazing. And price wise, you can see that it's going to be on the expensive side, 400 bits, even though most cards are going to be 4 ofs, or most decks are going to run 4 of these. So that's computer search. The other side of our trainers is going to be item finder. Item finder is essentially junk arm. It's essentially dowsing machine. Discard 2 cards from your hand in order to put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand. And once again, there's no supporters in Gen 1, so you can item finder for an Oak to get a brand new card or a brand new hand, and then continue your items to do more. Item finder can also get you computer search from the discard. It can get you any item from the discard, any trainer from the discard. So think about it. Think about it that way, right? Like uh, computer search gets you anything from your deck. Item finder gets you any trainer from your discard pile. This combination is allows you basically to get anything you want from your deck at any given point, or anything from your discard pile as well. So the flexibility you have with your 60 cards that you picked between these two cards is insane. And most decks will run 3 to 4 of this card as well because of the utility and flexibility that it can give you to get back any trainer you want, any oak. Like if your hand is dead, you have an identifier. At least you can get an oak if you already played one, and usually you will play one early. So huge card, very huge card. 3 to 4 copies per deck. Price wise, it's actually cheaper than computer search. But I'm selling one. I'm saying 4 here actually for 249. I do have a couple of spares of this, so fairly, that's a pretty respectable amount of bits to ask for. The other side of item finder is recycle. Recycle basically flip a coin. If heads, put a card from your discard pile on top of your deck. Not nearly as played as item finder, but it is another way to get something out of your discard pile. And then in this case, it's any card. It's not even trainer restricted. But not many decks have the space to fit something like recycle, even though it is useful. So the price is 1 bit. You can easily get a full playset of these if you want. But yeah, that's recycle. And let's see what's next. Energy removal. So this is the reason. This is the reason why Gen 1 is all about big basics and it's one of the fastest meta games, is because of energy removal. Because you can just choose one energy card attached to your opponent and discard it. It's like a crushing hammer without a coin flip. Um, Broken card that you can play 4 of in a deck and then reuse over and over with item finder if you want to. Like, this card is just completely insane, completely broken. It completely shapes the metagame of Gen 1. It basically destroys any deck that relies on an attack that's like a heavy energy count. Like 4 energy attacks are very rare in Gen 1 because of this card. Because you can just get rid of the opponent's energy at any given point. Like it's just broken. Paired with that is going to be super energy retrieval. Super Energy Retrieval says discard 1 energy card attached to one of your own Pokemon in order to discard 2 from the opponent's. So this is the other side of the disruption that you can have in Gen 1. You can just take away 2 of the opponent's energy cards, and the fact that you can only play 1 energy per turn, and you can play as many of these trainers as you want, up to 4. Like you can kind of see why 1 energy attacks are the driving force in Gen 1, because to try to build up to like a 3 or 4 energy attack when you have these cards in the meta game and everyone's playing them, it's incredibly hard. Price wise, you can see here energy removal is going to be pretty reasonable because it is a common in base set. About 50 to 100. Most people are selling for 100. This guy's selling it for pretty cheap there. But super energy removal, though, whole different story. It's a rare from Gen 1, and it's so powerful and so strong that you can see the price is insane for something like this. Not very low pull rate, and so and very competitive. So you can see why it's incredibly expensive. I'm fortunate to have pulled 3. I haven't bought one of these yet because of the price is too steep for me. But that's some disruption. Now, if you feel like this is just too broken, it's no fun for you to play with a meta that has these cards, you can also run no removal gym. No removal gym is basically a stadium. Says a player must discard 2 cards from their hand in order to play energy removal or super energy removal. So while it doesn't completely stop energy removal cards, it is such a huge hindrance in a deck that relies on energy removal. When you have to discard 2 cards to play something like removal, and then super energy removal, you're discarding your own energy as well, and 2 cards. Like again, remember most decks run 3 to 4 item finders and computer searches, and so most decks can't sustain that amount of milling where you have to discard 2 cards to use computer search, 2 cards for your item finder, and then 2 cards for energy removal. It's usually a huge deterrent for playing those cards. So no Removal Gem is your option, and if you want to try to use an attack that has 3 to 4 energies that isn't going to be needed, Nudgers, because this card is so competitive, you can see the price is reflected in that. It is a rare, and so that's another reason why the price is so high, 15 to 1600. It looks like it's going for. So that's your option to defend against the energy removals. Plus power is the next card. So once again, the gold standard HP is going to be about 70, and most 1 energy attacks, usually if they do 20, it's really good. So plus power is your way to turn 3-hit KOs into 2-hit KOs, and you can play these more. You can play as many of these as you want per turn as well. So you can potentially chain 2 to 3 plus powers to add 30 damage to your base attack. If it does 20, it's 50 damage. That is enough to KO a lot of basics that are evolutions, and it's you're going to be hitting 2 KOs at that point. So plus power is a huge card in Gen 1. It allows you to boost up your attacks without them being able to get rid of plus power, because you're playing it and then you're attacking. And so this allows you to kind of cheat the damage counts to turn a lot of 3-hit KOs into 2-hit KOs, even potentially 1-hit KOs. So plus power is heavily used, but it is an uncommon, and so the price wise it's only about 50 bits, so you can easily get a playset of those. Like paired with plus power is Defender. Defender, again, the gold standard for Gen 1 is about 70 HP, and Defender allows you to block 20. So it's a huge card in Gen 1. The other thing about Defender is when you have an attack that does damage to yourself, Defender actually works for those. So if your attack does 20 damage to yourself, you put on a Defender and it does nothing to you. And usually attacks that do damage to you are really good attacks that do a lot more damage to the opponent. So if you play a Defender, you're able to use a super broken attack for free, or with the damage to yourself being mitigated to a great extent. The good thing about that is you're attacking, Defender works. If they attack you, Defender works, and you can't get rid of it unless you like Lysander them from the active, and then it's useless at that point. But if you can potentially reduce recoil damage and take in and have a defense of 20 HP from the incoming attack, like, it's great. So Defender is heavily played. Once again, you can even item finder to get a Defender back out from the discard pile once you've used it. Some decks really rely on these, and you can even chain these. Like, you can put 2 Defenders on one Pokemon to protect you from 40 damage. So there's you can kind of see in a meta game where 30 damage is a lot of damage and 40 damage is an insane amount of damage. You can kind of see why Defender is heavily played. It's also super cheap because it is an uncommon, so about 8 to 10 bits is the price. Gust of Wind is going to be the next card. Choose one of your opponent's bench and switch it with his active. So it's Lysander. It's Catcher without a coin flip. It is broken. It is one of the most broken cards. But in Gen 1 though, because there's so many other broken cards, it really isn't as broken as you would think. But it is super important, because this is the reason why evolution cards really don't work in Gen 1, because at any given point you can just Lysander their evolution, like their basic, which usually has low HP, KO them, and they're not able to evolve. So Gust of Wind, and because you're able to pick whatever card you want from their bench, like this is such an important card for so many decks. Retreat is a huge problem in Gen 1. Because there's no float stone. So switch is really your main option to move around your Pokemon, from active to bench and whatnot. So if they Lysander you, then this is going to be a huge hindrance, and some decks are just completely beaten by this card. So definitely it's played 2 to 3 per deck, and price wise it's actually pretty reasonable as well. So you can easily get a playset of these. the other side of the coin with Gust of Wind is going to be Scoop Up. So Scoop Up is going to be, choose one of your Pokemon and play either active or bait or bench, and you just return it to your hand and you discard all the cards attached to it. So it's basically AZ, and without being a supporter. So you can play more, multiple of these per turn. But usually you wouldn't want to play more than one because, like I said, Gust of Wind is such a problem, especially if you have a Pokemon on the bench with high retreat. Scoop Up is going to be your way to get it out of the active. The other thing Scoop Up does is heals your Pokemon because you're just picking it up. So in a deck that usually uses big basics, it takes it. Let's say a Pokemon takes like 40, 50 damage. You can just scoop it up and all the damage is healed. Put it back down, and now you can reuse it. So Scoop Up is a huge card. Usually played like two to three per deck, depending on the deck, of course. But yeah, definitely useful, especially in a format with Gust of Wind. Scoop Up is going to be usually the answer to Gust of Wind. Price wise, it's pretty reasonable. So here's an example of one where I probably set this for sale a while back, and some guy came behind me and added another price drop. So this guy selling it for 90. I was initially, you can see what I was basing my price off of, which was 198. So I'm not really. So sometimes the prices can vary for things like this. I think this card usually does go for over 100. So this guy's just selling it for super cheap. But yeah, that's one example. Super useful card. Going into some cards that are super disruptive to the opponent's hand. First one we're going to be looking at is Rocket's Sneak Attack. So it says look at your opponent's hand. If he or she has any trainers, choose one of them. Your opponent just shuffles that card into his or her deck. So again, this is not a supporter. This is a trainer. You can play multiple of these per turn. And with a hand without trainers is essentially a dead hand because there's very few decks that are setup decks. Like there's very few decks that you are going to be setting up perfectly, right? Because there's so much disruption. You're usually always going to be wanting something from your hand to continue your momentum in a match. Rocket Sneak Attack completely destroys that momentum. It can get rid of any one trainer card from your hand, for essentially for free. There's really no drawback. It's not even a coin flip. You just take away one of their trainers. It's just completely powerful and completely broken. It is a rare, and so in terms of price, you can see it's about 250, 260. Not every deck plays this card, even though it's so good, precisely because of the 60 card syndrome, because there's so many playable, so many good cards. But it is a huge staple in disruption decks, so be on the lookout. Item Finder can get it back, so you can completely destroy a person's hand with just a couple of times using this in one single turn. So that's a huge card to look out for. And ironically, Team Rocket has another card that is super even more disruptive. Rocket's Trap. So flip a coin. If heads, choose up to 3 cards at random from your opponent, and your opponent shuffles those cards into his or her deck. So it's a coin flip, so that's at least something, but it's super powerful, super broken. If you get heads on this thing, and be aware that Item Finder can get it back for another flip if you like fail on the flip. But just getting rid of 3 cards from the opponent's hand is deadly. Super powerful. Hugely disruptive, can destroy a person's hand and therefore the match because the metagame in Gen 1 is so fast. It's a rare, so it's going to be incredibly expensive. 3 to like so let's okay, so the lowest listed here, you can also see it here, is going to be about 2,500 bits. I pulled a couple of these, and I think I bought like maybe 2 of these. So I've invested heavily in this card because it's just so expensive. But you can see why, because it's just insane how good it is. Continuing with the disruption motif at the moment. I think I spelled that wrong, so let's go with Revenge. Alright, so Imposter Oak's Revenge. Um, Discard a card from your hand. In order to play this card, your opponent shuffles his or her hand into the deck and then draws 4. So, again, not a supporter, it's a trainer. So, you just discard a card from your hand and drop the opponent down to 4. Imagine chaining this with Rocket's Sneak Attack and Rocket's Trap. You can literally just remove a person's hand with the combination of these 3 cards. Is how like powerful this combo is. Again, not every deck has the space to fit this amount of disruption, but most decks, like super competitive decks, if they have the space, they'll use things like this. Some decks are specially designed for disruption, where they can just wall you out of a game. So Imposter Oak's Revenge is definitely a useful card to know about. It's a way to heavily disrupt the opponent, along with Rocket's Sneak Attack and Rocket's Trap. It's an uncommon, so it's fairly cheap, about 14-20 bits is what you're seeing here. And to round up all of the disruption is going to be an infamous card, Lass. So Lass says, you and your opponent show each of your hands, and then shuffle all trainer cards from your hands into your decks. So again, in a super fast metagame like this, without your trainers, you've practically lost. Lass does that for you. Like you can play out your hand, play out your trainers, and then just hit him with a Lass. And while you lose your trainers, you've actually played some of them during this turn to get set up to a position where you can actually do some serious damage, right? So if you can hit them with a Lass at the end of your turn before you attack, like, you completely destroy all their trainers. If they haven't set up, they could potentially dead draw for 2 or 3 turns, and that's usually enough to just turn the tide of a match significantly in one person's favor. So absolutely, this is a powerful card. As the metagame, like back in when base set and the first couple of sets were the entire Gen 1 metagame, this card was played a lot more. But as the sets have evolved and more competitive trainers are printed, things like Rocket Sneak Attack, Rocket's Trap, things like that, like Lass is not seen as much play, but you can see how powerful it is, and so definitely be aware of it. And you'll usually see it somewhere along the way as you play these matches. So super cheap. It's actually cheap, even though it's a rare, because it's not as played more than in the past. About 50-75 bits. But yeah. So that rounds up all of the heavy disruption cards that you're going to be seeing. The next one to look at is going to be Nightly Garbage Run. In a format where Oak discards your hand and Oak is your primary way of drawing cards, Nightly Garbage Run is a godsend because it says choose up to 3 basic Pokemon, evolution cards, or basic energy cards from your discard pile, show them to your opponent, and shuffle them into your deck. So it's basically Super Rod, but you can play it multiple times per turn, and it usually is a way of recovering energy and Pokemon for you to sustain a match. Deck outs are huge in Gen 1, so this card allows you to potentially not deck out because it's super odd. So heavily played. In evolution decks, you see more copies of this because they rely on the evolution, and if you had to oak away some of the evolutions early on, you need to get them back somehow. This is how you're going to do it. This is really the main way that you're going to get Pokemon and energy from the discard pile. Sometimes people just, because again, there's so many competitive cards. There's another card, Energy Retrieval, where you discard a card from your hand in order to return 2 energy cards from the discard pile into your hand. That's one way to do it, but most of the time people just skip on that because Nightly Garbage Run allows you to get energy back plus Pokemon. So it has more utility and in more situations than things like Energy Retrieval. So you're going to be seeing this card more often. It's an uncommon, but even for an uncommon, look how expensive it is because so many decks rely on it to continue battling. Like, again, deck outs are so important, so this is how you're going to prevent that in a lot of the cases. So about 300 bits. Some of these prices, again, they vary a lot. Like the next one is 500, so this guy's probably just selling it for super cheap. But yeah, that's one card. Going into Switch, I usually like I'm not gonna spend too much time on this card, but this is gonna there's no floatstone in Gen 1, so this is gonna be the primary way you're gonna get stuff out of the active. The other thing is because the attack cost or because the attacks for most cards are super low, like 20, 30 damage, even though your HP is 70, you're still looking at 3 hit KOs and 2 hit KOs. So the special conditions become even more important at that point, especially like things like poison and confusion. The thing about confusion in Gen 1 is you have to flip a coin to actually retreat. You can't just retreat and be out of confusion. And the way it works is that you actually pay the retreat costs up front before you even flip the coin. So you could potentially, if you have a retreat cost of 2, you try to retreat when you're confused. You discard 2 energy from the Pokemon, and then you flip a coin and you get tails. You've lost the energy, plus the guy is still confused and he's still in the active. So Switch is going to be your primary way of moving heavy retreat Pokemon from the active to the bench, especially if they gust of wind heavy retreat Pokemon. Switch is going to be a way in case like it's an evolution or something, and you just it's too much energy on it. You don't want to commit to scooping it up. You just switch that out. Super cheap because it's a common one bid. You're going to get a playset of these very easy. Breeder. So Breeder is Gen 1's rare candy. It says put a stage 2 evolution card from your hand on the matching basic Pokemon. You can only play this card when you would be allowed to evolve that Pokemon anyway. It's literally rare candy for Gen 1. It's a trainer, so you can item find it when you need it. There's not many evolution decks in Gen 1, but there are a couple of key evolution decks that are very powerful. So Breeder will be used in those decks, and it being essentially rare candy, and usually evolution decks rely on the evolution to win anything. In those decks, this card is run in a heavy count of up to 3 to 4. It's a rare, and so you can kind of see the pricing. Here I am selling one for about $5.75, 25 lower than the next best. But yeah, very heavily played in evolution decks. Another card that is also heavily used in evolution decks is going to be Trader. So it's basically Pokemon communication. You trade one of the basic Pokemon or evolution cards in your hand for one of the basic or evolution cards from your deck, and then you show both cards to your opponent and you shuffle your deck afterwards. So in an evolution decks, if you open your hand, you have the evolution, but you want the basic instead. Since you don't have it in play, you just trade it away. Late game, you can trade away any basic you want for the evolution, and if you had a breeder in your hand, you can evolve directly to stage 2s. So Trader's really useful in those kinds of decks. Some decks' entire strategies rely on the Pokemon themselves, no items or trainers. So Trader helps in those decks because they're usually going to be running multiple evolution lines. So Trader's really useful. In terms of the pricing, it's also a rare, but not as essential to a deck as is rare candy for an evolution deck. So pricing wise, it's going to be a lot less than what Breeder goes for. So about 240 bits here. Next one we're going to be talking about is Goop Gas Attack. So Goop Gas Attack says all Pokemon powers stop working until the end of your opponent's next turn. Pokemon powers are huge. In any metagame, they're important. So this is Hex Maniac. It basically just stops all powers from working until the end of your opponent's next turn. Useful to have a one of in every deck because Item Finder is essentially a VS Seeker for this card. You can just get it back and use it when you need it. So, and then Computer Search can find it for the clutch moment that you need it. So, super useful. There's going to be a couple of Pokemon that are going to be only competitive because of their abilities, and so Goop Gas Attack will basically just destroy those Pokemon. So super useful to know about. Usually one of in decks. Sometimes decks don't even play it, but it's good card to know. Super cheap because it's a common, 4 to 5 bits. Easily you can get yourself a bunch of them. Potion is the next card we're going to be talking about. In standard and expanded, the current metagame, Potion is terrible because 2 damage counters on a 170 EX is actually not that much. Usually there are better options, but in Gen 1, um, your gold standard HP is 70, and most attacks do 20 to 30. So removing up to 2 damage counters is essentially undoing an opponent's attack. So it is played in Gen 1. Now, not as heavily as some things, and certain decks don't even bother with it. They would rather rely on Scoop Up because it gives them, the flexibility option, and it completely negates Gust of Wind. So, and in some decks they rely on low energy attacks anyway, so scoop up doesn't hurt them that much. So potion is almost useless because you can scoop up a Pokemon when they've taken half their HP's damage, and rather than healing just 2 with 1 card, you heal the whole thing. So not every deck uses it, but potion is super useful because 2 damage counters back then is a lot, and so you'll see it plenty of times in decks. Trainer, item finder can get it back for you, so you can potentially use more than one in one turn and really heal yourself that way. Add to that is going to be Super Potion. So Super Potion is discard 1 energy card attached to one of your own Pokemon, and in order to remove up to 4 damage counters from that Pokemon. So essentially, it's kind of like a Scoop Up, doesn't heal everything, and Scoop Up will discard your energy cards anyway. But the other thing about this is that you have to discard 1 energy card, so that's the other restriction for the card. Not, it's definitely played, but not as played as some other things. But definitely good to know that it's there for healing option. Cheap, even though it's an uncommon, it's super cheap because it's not that heavily played. Potion is also like dirt cheap. So these guys are selling them a little more expensive, but there's plenty of like 1 bits here, selling 3 of them for a bit here, even though I have 12. So yeah. This is another example of an offer I put long time ago. I don't even remember how long ago it was. Probably a week and a half ago, I put this offer up, and you can see how the offers just stick around. So next thing we're going to be talking about, these next cards I'm going to be going through faster because we've covered a lot of the competitive ones. So these next cards are just going to be stuff that you want to know about. Master Ball is one of those. Essentially, it says look at the 7 cards at the top of your deck. You may choose a basic revolution from this card search you find put in your hand. In this format, there's no Ultra Ball. Computer search is essentially your Ultra Ball, but you'd rather use that for other things. And so there's really not that many good ways of finding Pokemon from your deck. So Master Ball is one option. Just look at the 7 cards, pick something, and then put it in your hand. So that's one option. You can see that sometimes it's more cheaper than others. The other option is going to be Pokeball. Flip a coin. If heads, you may search your deck for a basic revolution and put it in your hand and shuffle your deck afterwards. So this is another option, but coin flip not as played. Well, usually what works better is trader works better, because then you have a card in your hand, and trader will allow you to just get anything you want. You can just swap it out. So trader is more often played, and it has more utility than Master Ball or Pokeball, which can fail. So definitely good to know about these two. Fairy Doll is the next card we're going to be looking at. It is a rare, but it's not as played as many of the cards. It's essentially a Robo Sub, except for 10 HP instead of 30. It's an item that or trainer you can just play down and it becomes a Pokemon. It can't be asleep, confused, or paralyzed, or poisoned, or anything like that. And if it's knocked out, like your opponent doesn't take any prizes for it. So useful for certain decks. One big deck is going to be the Wigglytuff deck, so we're going to be talking about that soon. But that's a card to know about. It's super cheap. You can get 4 copies, even though it's a rare. Energy Search is the next card we're going to be looking at. Energy Search is super cheap. Search your deck for a basic energy card, put it in your hand, shuffle your deck afterwards. If you're running a deck that has multiple energy types, fire, fighting, lightning, things like that, and some, they're going to require their own energy. So Energy Search lets you do that. You just find an energy card, put it in your hand. Some decks hinge on hitting for weakness, and Energy Search is really important in those decks because you're getting the exact energy that you need for that one Pokemon. So good to know. Good to know about it. And, if you don't have energy in your hand and you don't want to oak away everything, Energy Search lets you do that if you have an item finder or if it's already in your hand. Pokemon Center is the next card. Um, Not as played, but it says remove all damage counters from all of your own Pokemon with damage counters on them. Then discard all energy cards attached to this Pokemon. Some decks rely on moving around damage. Center helps you to basically just heal. It heals everything and it heals all damage, and you discard all energy. Some decks rely on the Pokemon either discarding energy or returning energy to your hand, and so they usually don't have any energy on them at that any given moment. So Center allows you to just heal those Pokemon for, and you don't have to discard anything because there's no energy on those Pokemon. So a Pokemon doesn't have to have even any energy on them to use to benefit from Pokemon Center. So really useful in certain decks. Really good to know, and it's super cheap too. Mr. Fuji is going to be the last item that we look at. Um, Choose a Pokemon in your bench, shuffle it, and any cards attached to your deck. So this is a way of saving resources. It's a way of preventing deck out. It's a way of healing and potentially reusing all of the energies attached to that Pokemon. So useful. Not every deck runs it, but good to know it's there. Good to know that it can help you in those clutch moments, and Item Finder can get it back. Super cheap card. Right. So those are going to be the competitive, like super competitive, often used trainers. You saw that we hit through a lot of the heavy hitters, heavy trainers, some of the more techie ones as well. But that's the Gen 1 lineup of trainers. There's so many more trainers out there though, so don't think that this is it. There are plenty more. So definitely, and as we go into more decks in the future, we're going to be seeing some of those trainers that are more techie, trainers you might not know about. But yeah, that's all the big ones. Let's go into some of the Pokemon. I don't want to cover all of them because there's, number one, far too many Pokemon to cover that are useful, and there's also, we're gonna be doing that in the deck builds in the deck videos. So let's go into some of the ones that you probably have already heard about. Some of the ones that most players will know about, and so there's no point to, like, there's no fear of spoiling anything or anything like that. First one we're talking about is, of course, going to be Hitmonchan. So one other thing to mention about TCG1 pricing is that the Pokemon, the super competitive Pokemon, are usually far more expensive than the items, and you're gonna see why. So Hitmonchan, 70 HP, gold standard HP, does 20 for 1 energy. Back then was amazing. 40 for 3 energy is also amazing. You might think that this is very bad, but 70 being a gold standard HP, this two shots practically everything, anything of everything of significance. The other thing to mention is plus power. It turns this into 50. 2 plus powers can make it 60. So 60 plus 20 is 80. So potentially you can KO an 80 HP Pokemon if you had your energy lineup. Now, two fighting in one color is actually a little odd, but jab is just a powerful attack. So you can very easily just hit people with jab all the time while you power up the second attack. And if you don't get to use the second attack, oh well. So who cares? Jab, you have 2 plus powers, turns 30 and 30 and make it 60. You're already into a KO range for 70 HP at that point. Just one more extra plus power could get you there. So Super powerful Pokemon used very heavily in the day. There's a lot of colorless Pokemon in Gen 1, and so Hitmonchan hits them for weakness, hits lightning Pokemon for weakness. So weakness is a huge part of Gen 1 metagames, and so this is one example of weakness Hitmonchan, super useful. Um, Classic Pokemon using Haymaker, which is a term for a big deck back in the day. You can see the pricing though is off the charts at 1100 bits. Super expensive card. The next card we're gonna talk about, Electabuzz. Um, Another huge card. Probably one of the biggest cards. Probably even to rival Hitmonchan because of the attacks. Thundershock, flip a coin. If heads, the defending Pokemon is now paralyzed for 1 energy. You can do 10 and potentially paralyze someone. Is like a stall tactic to get your second attack powered up. Very useful. It also mitigates energy removal to a certain extent because you just put 1 energy on and you could potentially paralyze the opponent. So they're going to need more items than just energy removal. They're going to need a switch. They're going to need a scoop up, things like that. So that extra bit of stall and disruption uh, makes it less likely that they will, like, let's say computer search for energy removal or item find energy removal because they need something else to continue the attack anyway. So it adds an extra element and it's really useful. Thunder Punch though, flip a coin if heads, it attacks us 30 plus 10 more. If tails, attacks us 30, and then Electabuzz takes 10 to itself. Defender means that it takes nothing to itself regardless of the coin flip, and plus power means that you could potentially do 50 for 2 energy. 50 for 2 is absolutely insane in this metagame. Um, Super powerful attack, super powerful. Potentially to do 40 for 2 is already insane enough that with plus powers you're getting pretty high in the damage output there. Electabuzz is a huge card in Gen 1 if you can find them because they're incredibly expensive. Like as you can see right now, there is only one person selling this card. Usually this card sells for about 1400 bits. This guy's selling it for 8,000 bits. So he's obviously gouging the market because he's the only one selling this card. Uh, I myself only have 2 copies because no one else is selling and I have yet to pull more. And I pulled these 2 that I have. So very, very in demand card. Very, very powerful. Next card we're talking about is going to be Scyther. So when Jungle came out, Scyther was by far and large the best card in that whole set. It's got free retreat. So in a format where there's no Floatstone, where Gust of Wind, aka Lysander, is free and a trainer, you can play it many times as you want in a turn. Like in a format like that, free retreat is an incredibly powerful luxury. The other thing to mention is his resistance. He is resistant to fighting, and Hitmonchan being such a powerful Pokemon in Gen 1, resistance really hinders Hitmonchan to a great extent. Like, the second attack for Hitmonchan is 40 resistance, it makes it down to 10. Like, that's almost nothing. Like, you're not going to be beating Scythers with the Hitmonchans anytime soon. So a really important key: resistance to fighting, free retreat cost, uncommon weakness, because back then fire was a super uncommon type of deck to encounter. 70 HP, gold standard HP. Swords Dance. During your next turn, Scyther's slash attack base damage is 60 instead of 30. So the fact that it's 3 colorless to do 30, 3 for 30 is powerful. Especially if it's colorless. So you can do 1 energy and then a DCE and you're able to hit someone for 30. If you can continuously do 30 damage, like, you're gonna be winning matches because 30 is a huge, like, 30 plus 1 plus power makes it 40, right? So 2 slash attacks is a 2-hit KO for the gold standard of 70 HP. So definitely a powerful card with the retreat, with the Swords Dance, which can do up to 60. If you can't do a slash on the first turn, you Swords Dance instead. The next turn, if you can power up slash with if they haven't played energy removal or things like that, then plus power this guy to 70, you're 1-hit KOing something. And in a format where when 2-hit KOs is kind of your standard, 1-hit KOs is amazing. For 3 energy even, Scyther is powerful. So cost wise, you can see where it comes from. 3,000 bits, and all of them are selling for 3,000. So huge card, super huge card, very powerful. Rocket's Zapdos. So when this card was printed, it was instantly good because of 70 HP again, good standard HP. Resistance to fighting is a very key resistance to have. Retreat cost is 2, but it's got this attack Plasma. If there's any lightning energy in your discard pile, attach one of them to Rocket's Zapdos, and you do 20 to do that. So Hitmonchan is great, where it does 20 for 1 energy, but there's no effect, right? And it's still good. This thing does 20 for 1 energy, and you accelerate energy from the discard pile onto Rocket's Zapdos. It makes it practically immune to energy removal. Like, if they remove your own lightning, like if there's no lightning in your discard, right, and you have 1 lightning energy, they remove it, who cares? Just put another one on, like usually you're gonna be running more than one. But if there are lightning in the discard, then you can accelerate very fast. In a couple of turns, you're getting to 4 energy because you're going to burn their energy removals out with this attack. He's in 70 HP with resistance to fighting. Like, you're not gonna, and then there's no weakness, so there's no way he's getting one shot, hardly ever. And so he's going to be alive long enough to actually potentially get to use the second attack with the acceleration that his first attack gives you. Second attack is Electro Burn. Rocket Zapdos does damage to itself equal to 10 times the number of lightning energy cards attached to it, and it does 70. So it's a one-shot finishing attack that just smacks someone for a 1-hit KO usually, and it does damage to itself 10 times the amount of lightning energy attached to it. So at minimum, you're going to be doing 30 to yourself if you had the last one being another energy type. But remember that this is a format with Defender, and so Defender actually blocks this 30. So you could potentially hit someone for 70 damage, and you only take 10 to yourself. Like, that is insane. And your force attack helps you set up this attack. Like, this card is incredibly competitive, super powerful. No weakness is a huge plus. In a format again where 2 shots is your game, to get 1 shot because you're weak to something is huge, and this guy has no weaknesses at all, and he has a super useful resistance. So absolutely a big card in Gen 1. Cost wise, you can see again the power of the card because no one's selling it for like less than 2,500, 220-ish. Blastoise is another card to talk about. Back in the day, this is really the only evolution card to survive because the ability, the power is just completely broken if you can get it in play. It's got 100 HP first of all, so it's not going to be dying very easily in a one shot outside of weakness damage. But it's got this Pokemon power, Rain Dance. As often as you like during your turn, before you attack, you may attach 1 water energy card attach 1 water energy card to one of your water Pokemon, and this doesn't use up the energy card attachment for the turn. The power can't be used if Blastoise is confused or paralyzed, but it does work from the bench. So this is basically the Blastoise we know of with Deluge, except that it only works for water Pokemon. But the fact that you can accelerate so much energy in one turn is what makes this card insane. Because Hydro Pump also, for 3 energy, does 40 damage. That's already a huge amount of damage. Plus 10 more damage for each water energy attached to Blastoise, but you can't use more than 2 extra energy. And you can't use the energy already attached to increase the damage output. So what that basically means is does 40 for 3. If you attach 1 more past 3, it becomes 50. Attach another one past that to get to 60, and that's where it maxes out. So for 5 energy, you're doing 60 damage. 1 plus power gets you into 1-shot KO range. 5 energy is actually very reasonable because of the Rain Dance Rain Dance power. So getting 5 energy onto a Blastoise is completely reasonable. Doing 60 with the plus power to get to 70 is insane. That's why this card survives. Like evolution decks are super hampered in Gen 1, except that people still play this one because of how strong it is. Because once you get it in play, you're able to just destroy someone. 3 retreat is where the weaknesses of the deck, that if you want to play this card as a primary strategy of a deck, usually the way that you beat something like this is you first of all try to drain their energy, but also Lysander up a Blastoise, because in an evolution deck, you're going to be having to cram your deck full of breeders and traders, and so you can't use those spots for things like too many switches, or you can't use scoop up because scoop up discards the basic, and you're usually breedering or slash rare cannering into Blastoise. So if you scoop it up, you can't play it down instantly. So that's where the retreat cost really comes into play. There's no flowstone, like I said, so and then scoop up is not a good option. So you're forced to switch, and so oftentimes your switches can be completely drained, and you can strand the Blastoise in the active. The Blastoise deck does play a much higher energy count than otherwise, like up to 20 or more. I've seen some builds with like 24 or 25 energy, and you're going to be using the energy with given the amount of damage that it can do. And again, Blastoise is paired with other water types that are able to hit really hard and heavy. But I'm just going to showcase the main one here because it's such a staple in that deck, because it's the whole Pokemon the deck is revolving around. In terms of cost, you can see is almost 1,000 bits here, so very expensive. Alright, I was gonna go into Wigglytuff. So Wigglytuff came out of jungle, and it's got 80 HP, so it's actually even higher than the gold standard 70. So it doesn't get one shot as easily. It is a stage 1 though, so evolution, being an evolution means that it is kind of hampered to a certain extent. It's got this attack though, do the wave, just 10 damage plus 10 more damage for each of your bench Pokemon. So again, in a format where 20 and 30 damage is really cool, this potentially can give you up to 60 damage. So, with a plus power, you're one-shotting things. Again, this is another way to get a one-shot. Downside, of course, is that it takes 3 energy to do it. And in Gen 1, so many decks are going to be running energy removal. So it's not as like you're gonna have to run other heavy hitters with Wigglytuff and use Wigglytuff as a finisher if you can get it set up. Once the opponent has drained all their energy removals, then you can potentially hit them with Do the Wave and to potentially one shot like everything that it usually faces. The other thing to mention is Clefairy Doll. Like I said, Clefairy Doll lets you turn a trainer into a Pokemon. You just put it on your bench, and the opponent can't take prizes for it. So what often happens is people will. There's also another one, Mysterious Fossil, which is a way to evolve into fossil Pokemon. But Mysterious Fossil also is a trainer that becomes a Pokemon with like 10 HP. But all you got to do is just like play down a bunch of Clefairy Dolls and Mysterious Fossils, and Wigglytuff can do 60 damage. So it's actually very easy to get your bench full. The other thing that's really good about Pokédoll and things like that is their retreat cost is like non-existent, and you can just get rid of them. So there's no liability sitting on the bench with that strategy, and Wigglytuff still hits you for the 60 damage. So really useful. The one thing is it is weakness to fighting, so that's a huge negative part. What people often do is they pair Wigglytuff with Scyther because Scyther has fighting resistance, and so it's a good match. It's a good pairing. One is weak to fighting, the other resists fighting. It's really good. The other thing is it is resistant to Psychic, and Psychic Pokemon, the biggest one is going to be Mewtwo. We're going to talk about that soon. But really good and important resistance to Psychic. There are several Psychic Pokemon that are useful in Gen 1. So Wigglytuff, Do the Wave, super powerful back in the day. When Jungle was released, this was the standard deck. Like this deck like was played everywhere. So you can kind of see why, because you can get to one hit KO level. Price wise, you can see very expensive, on par with Blastoise, 100 bits or 1,000 bits. I meant to say, so very expensive. Ditto is another one. It's got this Pokemon Power Transform. If Ditto is your active, treat it as if it were the same card as a defending Pokemon, including type, hit points, weakness, and so on. Except that Ditto can't evolve, always has this Poke Power, and you may treat any energy attached to Ditto as energy of any type. And if Ditto isn't a copy of any of the Pokemon, while it's asleep, confused, or paralyzed. So base HP of 50, but if it's in the active, it just copies the opponent's HP. The other insane thing about it is that while you do need the energy requirements, any energy attached to Ditto is energy of any type. So attach a DCE on a Ditto, it can be 2 psychic energy, it can be 2 lightning energy, it can be anything you want, and that's insane. Um, you're able to cheat a lot of attacks this way. Like look at Rocket Zapdos. It needs 3 lightning and a colorless. With Ditto, it just needs 2 DCE, and you're able to hit the opponent um, with the 70 damage attack. Like it's insane. Weakness to fighting, but the transform actually swaps out the weaknesses and all that. So that's not as relevant. The thing about Ditto is that it's a double-edged sword. If they like, let's say Ditto is copying a 70 HP Pokemon and it takes 30 damage, right? Uh, and then the opponent brings up a super weak Pokemon that has 30 HP. Ditto instantly copies that Pokemon, and because it has 30 HP, it gets instantly KO'd without the other guy even attacking you. So they take a prize and they can still attack after that. So it's double-edged sword for sure. The other thing to mention is, let's say it takes 50 or 60 damage, and then the opponent gust of wins you, and it gets sent to the bench. And once it's on the bench, it's back to being Ditto, and so it gets instantly KO'd that way as well. So definitely something that is powerful, but situational and also double-edged sword. Price wise, because it is so competitive, gonna be running you about 800 bits is where it's gonna go. But yeah, that's Ditto. Let's see what else we got. Fossil Magmar. So Fossil Magmar is gonna be the standard fire type that, like, Hitmonchan is the classic face of fighting type. Electabuzz is the classic face of electric types. Magmar is going to be the classic face of fire types. So he's got 70 HP, gold standard, 1 retreat cost, which is very respectable. Weakness to water, so Blastoise is going to be the main thing that gives it trouble. But it's got Smoke Screen. If the defending Pokemon tries to attack during your opponent's next turn, your opponent flips a coin. If tails, that attack does nothing. So for 10 damage, 1 energy, you can potentially wall the opponent for a turn. And the opponent has to flip a coin to attack, even if it's tails, it does nothing. Like, that's really insane. It stalls you enough to power up the second attack. Smog for 2 energy to do 20 damage. You flip a coin if a defending Pokemon is now poisoned. So you flip a coin, and if they get poisoned, they does 20 plus 10 more for 30. And then it comes into your turn, it becomes 40. Like because HPs back then were so little, 70 HP, poison was huge back then. Most Pokemon can't take more than 2 or 3, like more than 2 poisons at most, especially if they're getting hit at the same time. And this is 20 base, and plus power makes it 30, or higher. So you think about it, like if you plus power this thing and you hit him with Smog and you flipped heads, so 30 with the plus power, poison gets us to 40. It's 40 damage for 2 energy, and they're poison. They take 10 more going back to you to get to 50. Like, and then you hit them for 20, 70. Like, it's super powerful, super useful. Magmar is definitely a good card in Gen 1. The fact that it's fire and means it hits Scyther for weakness. So that's a huge thing to know about, because Scyther is so heavily played. Magmar is able to hit it for weakness and poison people at the same time and block people of attacks the first turn. So very, very useful. It's got disruption built into its attacks, and its attacks for low energy costs are respectable. So played well. Fire, though, is an uncommon attacking type, though. Like, Magmar is kind of your main fire type anyway, so price-wise is not as high as some of the other ones, about 400, 500 bits that it's gonna cost you. but really useful because it's one of the best fires in Gen 1. Mewtwo. So, no, we're not talking about this one. We're not going to be talking about this one because this one is super bad. What we will be talking about, though, is one of the most viable promos uh, that have been printed. The promo Mewtwo was released with the Pokemon, the first movie, and it's a doozy of a card. So 70 HP, gold standard, 2 retreat costs, reasonable. Energy absorption. Choose up to 2 energy cards from your discard pile and attach them to Mewtwo for 1 energy. That is insane, especially given that you spend 1 and attach 2 to get to 3. And now you're hitting the opponent for 40 damage. 40 for 3 is powerful. Hitmonchan hits 40 for 3, and you have to manually power up that guy. This thing has an attack called Energy Absorption that sets you up in 1 turn. So Energy Absorption practically makes you immune to energy removals, because it just takes you 1 turn to get him back. So very powerful. The other thing about it is it says choose up to 2 energy cards from your discard pile and attach them to Mewtwo. So it can be anything. Rainbow Energy does exist in Gen 1, and so you can even energy absorb 2 Rainbow Energy. And there's another Pokemon that allows you to move around Grass Energy, but Rainbow being Grass, you can absorb special energy from the discard at that point, and then move them around with the other Pokemon. It's it's super powerful, and its attack is insane, 40 for 3, and the first attack sets you up. It's a super powerful card. It has a weakness of Psychic, so usually this is the face of Psychic Pokemon in Gen 1. So it's gonna be Mewtwo Wars all over again, essentially. Some key Pokemon has resistance to Psychic, like Wigglytuff is an example. The colorless Pokemon have resistances to Psychic, and so that's kind of where again 40 damage with resistance becomes 10. So very bad against resistance Pokemon. So, but definitely powerful card. It's a promo, which means that you can't buy it from the market. You have to win it with achievements. So getting 4 of these is very, 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 very hard. Not many people can get to that point unless they've played the game for a significant amount of time to just achieve to continuously win on those achievements. So very good card for Gen 1. Next card to talk about is going to be Mr. Mime. So Mr. Mime is released from the Jungle set. He's got 40 HP, right? So super weak amount of HP. 1 retreat cost, respectable, and weakness of Psychic. We just saw Mewtwo that hits Psychic Pokemon for 40. That's his whole HP, and he has a weakness to get to 80. This guy's gonna get destroyed by Mewtwo, right? No, because Pokemon Power has an invisible wall. Whenever an attack, including your own, does 30 damage or more damage to Mr. Mime, after applying weakness and resistance, prevent that damage. So any other effects of attack still happen, and the power can't be used if Mr. Mime is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. So what does this mean? So his HP is 40, and anything that does 30 or more is completely blocked. So that means that the lowest amount, the highest amount of damage you can hit this guy, and it penetrates through the ability is 20. So you're forced to two-shot this guy, basically. And this is a huge wall for a lot of decks because Blastoise is an example, right? Every attacker in the Blastoise deck, except for Lapras, which is uncommon nowadays, but most attackers in the Blastoise deck will hit starting at 40, starting 30. So if you don't run a card in Blastoise that does less than 30 damage, this card will beat you because of the power. This was a huge wall back in the day. You just put them up in the active when the opponent has a board state that doesn't have any low damage attacks, and this just blocks it for you. You can buy yourself a couple of turns with this card. Now, Gust of Wind does exist, obviously, and so if you have other Pokemon on the bench, they can just Lysander it up. But Mr. Mime is there as a wall, and usually used as a 1-of, 2-of in some decks. Wigglytuff uses it as a techie wall in case it runs across a deck that does too much damage, and so Mime is an equalizer in that deck. His attack is actually not that great, but you know it does 10 damage plus 10 more damage for each damage counter on the defending Pokemon. So while it itself doesn't do much damage, if you can have another attacker hit the opponent and the opponent KOs you, send up Mr. Mime for a one Psychic and one Colorless, you're able to smack them for a lot of damage. Um, some decks, again, their damage output starts at 30, especially evolution decks. And so, and they usually evolution decks have high HP. So meditate will allow you to actually hit the evolved Pokemon for quite a bit of damage if you can set up the damage up front. So like a Blastoise is 100 HP, right? So if you can do even 50, 60 damage to Blastoise, this thing will just destroy it and it'll clean up the rest of the 40. So the attack is definitely useful to know about, but the ability is why you're going to play the card. Super expensive. This guy's being funny with the 666 thing, but about 700, 750 bits is what it goes for. Dark Vileplume is another card. It's going to be the last Pokemon we talk about because of just the infamy of the power. So we have a Vileplume right now that blocks all items and stuff. This thing works the same way, except that it blocks trainer cards. So no trainer cards can be played. Its power stops working if Dark Vileplume is asleep, confused, or paralyzed. 60 HP, so it's actually, you know, less than 70, which is the gold standard, but this power is insane because back then, again, there's no supporters, there's no items, there's no distinction between any of those things. So trainer cards means every trainer card. It means oaks, computer searches, bills, stadiums, you know, anything. Every trainer card in your deck is useless when once Dark Vileplume comes into play. You can completely wall decks with this card. Um, super, super powerful. Most people don't even use this card for the attack, but it does have one. Flip 3 coins, attack does 30 damage times the number of heads. If you get 2 or more heads, Dark Vileplume is now confused. Um, People don't usually attack with it because, you know, if you get confused, it goes into the opponent's turn, and once it's confused, the power stops working, and so the opponent can all of a sudden play items and stuff, play trainers and all that. So most people are not going to be using the attack. It's going to be a bench warmer where the power still is in effect. So definitely very, very, very powerful. In a properly built deck, this thing will destroy everything. Because if you can get it out fast enough, you know. In you know, evolution decks are very hard in Gen 1. This being a stage 2 means you're gonna have to use breeder to get into it. So because evolution decks are so hard, because Lysander, because Gust of Wind exists, usually your Oddishes are gonna get KO'd before you can get this out and play. And you usually want to get your board set up before you get this out and play. So there's a fine, you know, tightrope that you have to walk to get your board set up to where you're ready to start attacking or stalling or whatever your strategy is before you play Dark Vileplume, while also keeping your Oddishes alive because you know from Gust of Wind and things like that. So uh, super powerful card though if you can play it right. Price wise, in the expensive range of 1,000 or more. This guy's selling it for 800, so that's a really good deal. But yeah, that is all of the Pokemon I want to talk about. So I'm not sure how long this video is at this point, but you know we've talked about a lot of Gen 1 stuff. The other thing to talk about for TCG1 is you can go to Quick Play, and Quick Play has all these decks that other people have created, and they're posted here. And these decks go back like quite a while, like up to 30, 40 months. So that's years. So the other thing to mention is you can actually filter out these formats. So you can filter out Gen 1 and what's loading because there's so many decks in the list right now. But you can filter out Gen 1 and you can see all these lists that other people have made. You can kind of get a feel for how deck building works. You can get a feel for how many copies people play, some cool strategies and some cool decks to think about. Um, but yeah, so go here, go to Quick Play Decks to get ideas for decks, to figure out your how many copies of certain things you want to run. Um, let me try to get out of here. I think it kind of stalled there because there was too many decks that it loaded. I've had this happen before where it just loads and I kind of like go to a different screen and it comes back and everything's loaded. So it takes some time, but I guess we're kind of frozen at this point. But yeah, we talked about TCG1, talked about the market, the bits, the way that how many you get per battle, how to build your career mode, how to play. We talked about all the cards, so there's really nothing stopping you guys. Just head on over, Google search TCG1, first link, start an account. It's super easy to make an account as well. Start career mode, start playing start getting in the queues because TCG1 is awesome and Gen 1 is awesome. It's this is the nostalgia. This is your childhood here if you played back in the day like I did. So definitely come along and take a look here. Uh so many fun decks, like so many options, like so many cards that I didn't even know about until I started playing. Like super fun to learn about everything. You can create some super crazy decks. Like we're gonna be showcasing some of these decks, but like here's an example of something that would never work anywhere else. But it's like basically a bunch of low HP basics that all do 20 damage for 1 energy. And so your whole goal of the deck is to hit the opponent for weakness. So you're doing 40 damage per energy, and you have all types in here. You have like 4 rainbow energy to sustain all the energy types, plus energy surge and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be talking about this deck. We're going to make a video on that, but it's an example of the creativeness you can have in this format, where there's so many playable cards, so many playable Pokemon, and because the damage outputs are all low, you're like playing with 2 shots and 3 shots and things like that. It's fast and slow at the same time. It's kind of funny. It's kind of weird. It's kind of cool. So go ahead and get on TCG1 play. Maybe I'll see you guys in play here. Um, but yeah, that's the video, guys. We're going to be showcasing more decks in the future. I'm not sure of the frequency of the videos. It kind of depends on my schedule, things like that. But I'm going to showcase to you some of the decks once I get my collection built up too. Like I don't have my collection too. Like I've spent some time to build it up, so I'm going to be getting more and more. But hopefully I have enough to showcase you some cool decks. Again, the like some of the cards are so expensive, 2,000 bits when you're only making about 30, 40 per match. So it can be time consuming, but it's fun at the same time, especially when you save up for something and you buy it and you're able to create the deck that you've been waiting for the whole time. Like it's super fun. I remember the first time I got enough competitive cards to make my first competitive deck, and I won with it. It was such a good feeling because I'd grinded so much. I played theme decks so much to get those bits to get everything set up. Like it was really 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 fun to get it and really rewarding once I got to that point. So go ahead and try it out, guys. See if you like it. See if you like Gen 1. And if so, then go ahead and check out the next video. It's not up yet, but it will be. So yeah, take care, guys. See you later.